Welcome back and thanks so much for staying with Africa News Network First Fast Live. My name is Cindy Mabi. Good evening to you. ANC Youth League has welcomed ANC presidential hopeful Cyril Ramaphosa's seeming shift in his stance on the radical economic transformation policy. Spokesperson Mondli Mkhize says every ANC policy is a collective one, and as such every member, regardless of their position, should align themselves with the policies. Ramaphosa was addressing a send-off rally in Soshanguve, north of Pretoria, this past weekend. He emphasized on the need for radical transformation in the private sector, something that is more in line with the stance of his closest rival, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. But is Ramaphosa just playing to the gallery, or is this really a fundamental shift in his stance on radical economic transformation?
70% private sector. We want to see transformation. Now we want to speed up radical economic transformation. Without any fail, black people must become owners and controllers and managers of our economy. We don't want to end up with slogans. Hariako conferencing ya rena ya December. Raise strategies, real workable strategies on how our people are going to be economically empowered.
If the Deputy President of the ANC is speaking about radical economic transformation, that is something that we should acknowledge, as the Deputy President is speaking about the policy of the ANC. Any other, whether it's a new deal, it's a raw deal, whatever deal, we don't know it in the ANC. We are grateful that the Deputy President is now speaking about the decisions of conferences and meetings of the African National Congress. And that by no way should we contaminate the environment and suggest that is a matter that is realizing that society is rejecting this new deal or society is not agreeing with it. And we want to request him to consistently speak about policies of the ANC. There is no man who runs an individual show in the ANC. Every decision of the ANC are collective decisions, and therefore you should stop disassociating with those decisions as a leader within a collective.
And Ramaphosa's latest stance on radical economic transformation is that it must be implemented now. But until now, he had mostly referred to RET as inclusive growth and made it incumbent on consensus. He also warns the private sector to urgently transform. This is after previously refraining from attacking lack of transformation in the private sector. Ramaphosa now also backs free education for the needy, and this is a shift from his advocating affordable education rather than free education. And several key questions now arise. Is Ramaphosa's baptism by radical economic transformation a little too late? And is it a recognition of the dominant and popular demand from the ground? As Cyril Ramaphosa played straight into Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma's hand by adopting her campaign slogan? And lastly, is Ramaphosa now recognizing that he can't run away from the urgent call for radical economic transformation and his own party's policy? And joining us in studio is Fiso Mahlango, Group Political Editor. We have Papano Pasha, PPF spokesperson, and that's the Professional Progressive Forum. And we have Lucky Tegisho, Transform RSA Deputy President. Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, political analyst, joins us via Skype. And Thabo Mutle, ANC Youth League NEC member, on the phone line. Good evening to all our guests, and thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to start with Papano, my queen. You know, there's an extension from the previous discussion on what you make now of the more decisive and more clearer stance of Cyril Ramaphosa.
Well, good evening, Cindy. I think Cyril is conceding to the popular view, and he's now saying that I'm part of the ANC, but he's not, saying all these things, I think based on what he believes in. I think it's a deliberate move. He's saying that he's lagged behind in terms of the issues that he has raised. But I think over and above that, his team or his campaign team, they have been able to evaluate in relation to what happened at Orlando, where he went with your Stephen Kosef and your Coleman of Goldman Sachs. So it is a calculated strategy to actually deal with what happened at Orlando. But I think, ordinary ANC members must also be clear of what Cyril is actually doing. I don't think the latest move are quite innocent or quite genuine. I think it's just playing to the gallery. I think he's just playing to directly, as you said, to the hands of Nkosazana Zuma and to the delegates in particular who've made a clarion call to say that radical economic transformation now.
Yeah. Is this also in the tactical move that you're talking about to diminish the support that we've seen, if the numbers are to be believed, that Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is at least, give or take, about 30% ahead of the race? Is this to diminish her support in your view?
Good evening to you and good evening to your viewers. It could possibly be a stance for publicity and PR in the last race. But it could also be a move to drift closer to ANC policy after hearing robust discussions and an outcry from the branches and many ANC people and ANC followers and comrades saying the New Deal is not our policy. I think South Africans need to understand that radical economic transformation is not the policy of President Jacob Zuma. It is an adopted policy in Polokwane, a policy of the ANC. And if one speaks RET, they speak the language of the ANC. So it cannot be dismissed. However, he went to Orlando and other places and introduced a new economic referendum, a new policy, and called it the New Deal. The New Deal has not been tested by the ANC. It was not vetted by the ANC. It was not introduced as policy in the policy conference. So there was no way that it can be adopted now in December because it was not debated. It was not part of the deliberations of the policy conference. So seeing the outcry of his New Deal, deal with partners, with white monopoly capital, I think it is now a drift back to ANC policy to say radical economic transformation is the way to go. This New Deal might be very attractive to white capital. It might be attractive to investors because Mr. Pravin Gordhan is on record for saying if Cyril does not win, this country will be downgraded. Because others, Mr. Rupert and the likes, have said radical economic transformation is a code word for theft. So he thought he'd go on that to be very attractive to white monopoly capital, which he has always been. But seeing a complaint and an outcry from the branches, I think the tactical and very strategic Deputy President has felt, let me drift back to ANC policy, because this is not a national election. He needs the branches. He doesn't need the vetting of the media and the DA at this point.
Silver bullet in the sense that if he doesn't speak the language or he was appeasing white monopoly capital, could cost him the ascension to the presidential race or, of the ANC. Is that your view as well, Mr. Tekisi?
Yes. Good evening, Cindy and the viewers. Yes, I think it's my view. We think that this is an act of desperation, and it's quite indigenous. It's not honest, Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because of two critical issues. I think the people that worked with him have assessed the situation to say the radical economic transformation together with land expropriation without compensation but within the legal framework is gaining momentum. And because he has been talking about corruption, people going to jail, the Gupta's obsession about the Guptas, and all of those things that are not matter really to the people, as opposed to the radical economic, because people want to know, how are you going to help us? And these are clear ANC policies that seeks to help our people. So he has failed in ensuring that people understand exactly what policies is he selling. And unfortunately for him, it's late for him to raise these issues because we have seen through him. We know that he does not stand for that. He's really somebody that is very close to white monopoly capital, and he's their friend, and therefore he cannot help us. We are afraid of him precisely because of the fact that he is close to white monopoly capital. And if he's close to them, we must be worried.
Yeah, but the issue is not really about policy, it's also the implementation, because Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, hypothetically speaking, when she ascends to power, becomes the president of the country, could also be sabotaged in the sense that the ministers or DGs or whoever so-called gatekeepers of white monopoly capital could perpetuate the status quo.
No,
you know, so my point is, even if one could say that Cyril Ramaphosa is sincere, he is being genuine, his campaign is evolving towards what he realizes is what people want, or the majority want.
How does a campaign evolve in 2 weeks? I mean, a campaign cannot just evolve in 2 weeks, but over and above that, I mean, there's historical reference to what Cyril Ramaphosa stands for. He has been close, as my fellow panelists have indicated, to white monopoly capital. So what we are seeing at the moment is just a leeway to find, to be closer to the aspirations of ordinary ANC members, in particular delegates who are going to be part of the conference, who themselves have called for radical economic transformation. I mean, if you even go back to Polokwane, they even spoke about transforming the economy, so this is not new. But Ramaphosa, when he deliberately took a position to say that he's presenting a new economic policy, a new deal, which is inclusive of the private sector, which the ANC itself has deemed as the enemy of its own revolution, he has conceded. He is clearly saying that I was wrong. And I think to many of the delegates who have been supporting Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, they must be able, to evaluate, to take heed, and to actually say, but what does this comrade actually stand for? Does he stand for the New Deal? Does he stand for radical economic transformation? What does he really represent? But we'll see what happens. But he has to, I mean, it's not the first time, by the way. When, for example, he goes to events where you find that it's mainly predominantly the private sector, his language changes. When he goes to poor communities, his language changes. So he stands for everything and nothing at the same time.
But he would appeal to the political bourgeoisie who've got, vested interests in the economy, who are otherwise upwardly mobile and are comfortable in their position or their earning ability. Do you think that the masses or the at branch level, this could change the trajectory of what we've seen in the numbers coming in support of CR17?
I think anything is possible at this point. And if you have a lot of money, you can swing the votes in any direction. And if you've got the support of white capital who has invested interest, you can swing the voter into any direction, because people, particularly politicians, are always available to fill their own pockets. With a disregard for struggling communities. So I think the ball can go either way at this point in time. But the trajectory of this country, how this country got colonized, is something we need to consider. We call this colonization the colonization of a special type, because the colonizers are still here. If you look at a country like Botswana, where colonization happened 52 years ago in September this year, they left the land, they left the economy, and they moved back to England. However, in South Africa, the colonizers are still here. They still hold the economy, the means of production. They still own the land and the farms thereof. And everything that exists in this country of white color and black color, they still own. So this is a colonization that South Africa needs to, go deeper into, to reverse the gains of apartheid. So if one looks at a new deal, I think it will, in my view, be a slap on the face of the black voter to say, will this new deal reverse the gains of apartheid? Will it give me land? Will it supply me with free education? Will it give my child the ability or the possibility to study for free? Will it provide the health care that we have been denied for so many years? If the new deal cannot present that, then it's not ideal for the black voter.
Can
so
we-
we're not a country that can simply say we'll adopt any policy. This colonization was of a special type. So any manner of transformation moving forward has to be of a special type. And I think radicalism is that special type because we're working against a monster that existed for 430 years.
I want to respond to
Go ahead.
this issue of our people being bought. Yes, we know that CR has a lot of resources from white monopoly capital, the media is supporting, and a lot of business people. The money is there. But what we do know is that you must never undermine the branches, the people that are going to go to the conference. And I'm saying this because I know for a fact that the people have been briefed, and I have also, you see, you can't sell out serious policy issues on the basis of money. What they are going to do, they will take that money. But when they go in there, they are alone. And we trust them that they will do the right thing in order for them to be able to ensure that radical economic transformation is going to take place.
Okay, let's get a view from Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, political analyst, Thabo Mutle, NC Youth League NEC member. Professor Mngomezulu, just your view and what seems to be more getting on the bandwagon and appropriating what Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma had been saying all along. What do you make out of it?
No, I think that we have a problem with most of the leaders who are vying for the ANC leadership position because they don't seem to have something concrete which they are rallying their campaign around. And as a result, they grab one thing today and then tomorrow they grab something else. If this doesn't work out, then they lose it, they grab another one. What has been happening with Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is that from the word go, she was clear that the ANC's policy conference that happened in June, in fact, gave her a green light as to what exactly needs to happen in terms of building her campaign. And one of those issues was radical economic transformation. And I think that she has done that consistently. And now I think what the Deputy President has realized is that when listening to feedback from those who are listening to her campaigns and those who are attending some of her campaigns, officer campaigns, is that they are particularly concerned about the fact that he's not coming up front in as far as radical economic transformation is concerned. And yet this is a policy position of the ANC. Instead, he's coming up with what he calls a New Deal. And then the question is, where was the New Deal discussed? Because all the draft documents that were discussed in June did not mention anything about the New Deal, but said a lot about radical economic transformation. So I think that then what the Deputy President is doing, he has realized that he is making a mistake by not following the cue that he got from the ANC policy conference, and now he's trying to do what Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma has been doing all along.
All right, let's get Mr. Mutle, your view. You're also circumspect of Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa's position lately.
Yes, thank you, Cindy. You see, what perplexed me is that the Deputy President is easy to make mistakes and come out in the public and apologize, and apologies are accepted anonymously. So, but the fact of the matter is that there's a saying that says, whenever you say something for the first time, you say it with conviction. Whether you withdraw it at the later stage, but it is what you are convinced or something that you believe in. So we are very much surprised where does the New Deal come from, because it has never been discussed anywhere in the ANC. We don't know where it comes from. But of course, because he is used to making this kind of utterances and later on changing or making a public apology about whatever that he goes around saying, I think the public will accept the changes that he is making on a daily basis. But from the Youth League point of view, is that he is continuing to say to the public that I am not exactly sure of what is it that I will do when I become the president of the African National Congress.
Yeah, please stay on the line, Remote. Yeah, Papano, just in how, to take from the Daily Maverick gathering and what the DA leader, Mmusi Maimane, had said that, you could actually have a body double in so many words in the sense of deputy president. His campaign at the moment, in your view, in whether it does have the weight it carries, what this country needs, or is it more a softer approach of essentially keeping or pacifying the masses, including business, in the illusion that there is something better coming?
Well, Ramaphosa has been very consistent with being inconsistent. So, as everyone has indicated, he says this to a particular audience, and then he changes when he goes to another audience. So, I mean, it's quite evident that you are not dealing with a genuine person. And I think not only to ANC members who will be voting at the December conference, also to South Africans, if you look at such a leader, what are you exactly dealing with? If you do not have a presidential candidate who does not know what he actually stands for. But I think what is an indictment is that he has diverted from what the ANC seeks to achieve. In fact, if you listen to the president of the Democratic Alliance, Mmusi Maimane, when he says that Cyril Ramaphosa has actually plagiarized DA policies, it means that Cyril Ramaphosa will change the ANC to be like the DA. And this mainly speaks to the funding model. Remember that both Ramaphosa and the DA are funded by the same people. They're funded by your Stephen Koseff of this world, your Goldman Sachs. So, to ANC members and to all progressive forces in South Africa who continuously speak about transformation, what does it actually speak to? To Cyril Ramaphosa, for example, who's now speaking about radical economic transformation, when he has said that mining charter will scare investors away, what does it actually mean? Because, as South Africans, as black people who are landless, who are in debt, what does it mean when you have a leader who's saying that, for example, investors comes before the aspiration of the black majority? It means that, looking at Cyril, we are sitting with a crisis. We are sitting with a leader who knows what North he stands for.
And his backers, or those who endorse him, who are sympathetic towards Cyril Ramaphosa, in your view, Mr. Matlangu, is this what South Africa needs? If the banking surveys are anything to go by, to say, this will be our buffer, our best shot in getting the country back on track, getting the necessary investment and keeping stability and junk status at bay?
I think the branches of the ANC will decide, and I can only pray and hope that they decide carefully, because they are in a marriage of 5 years, and that will be a long time for them and their children. Particularly when policy is concerned. But I do deem that Mr. Mmusi Maimane's comments were an insult to the Deputy President. Him suggesting that Mr. Ramaphosa has plagiarized a DA policy and tries to ignite it as ANC policy. But there is a way, I think, in this country that white people relate to Mr. Ramaphosa in a way that they've never ever related to any other black leader. When Monday, the Black Monday event happens, people have large cards saying, "Fire Zuma, hire Cyril." Those predominantly racist communities. What would people who hate the African people, who have no desire to share the wealth of this nation, want Cyril to be the president? So if one wants to quote Mr. Julius Nyerere to say, don't trust a man who is particularly loved by white people. You need to look at what do they see in him that they're comfortable with. In a country where people do not want to share the means of production, they don't want to share the economy, and they don't want to share the land. I believe Mr. Ramaphosa's given to this country, in his days in CODESA, in his days in the NUM. But I'm particularly afraid when I see white communities with regard to the economy become very comfortable around him in a manner that it is unbelievable that they'll ever bring back the land or ever share the economy. And I think that's a scary fright for any voter of the ANC.
Professor Mgomezulu, is it your view that if Cyril Ramaphosa becomes president of the ANC, that would be the death of the radical economic transformation policy or its implementation?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because if you listen to the tone of his utterances, he is basically saying that he is more prone to support Western forces. The very same people who are funding him, the Standard Bank and many others, who are saying that in the event that Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma becomes the leader of the ANC, then that would mean economic meltdown of this particular country of ours. So this is the kind of a person who enjoys more support from the West than he enjoys support from his own political party, the ANC. Thank God that some of us will not be voting. Otherwise, we would have not voted him for the simple reason that his policy position, which is not the ANC position, in fact, is not appealing to the majority of the people. Like my sister said there, and like my son said there, I concur 100% that Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't seem to know exactly what he stands for. And therefore, on the issue of radical economic transformation, which is an ANC policy, at least in its draft form, until it is adopted in December, at least that is what the position of the ANC is, that you need a radical economic transformation. And then if you have someone who says something contrary to that, and then you still want to vote that person to be your president, you are basically saying we are voting someone in who is not going to implement your policies. Then that is a recipe for disaster.
All right, Professor Peggy Mgomezulu, political analyst on the line, and we had Thabo Mutla, ANC Youth League NEC member. Thank you so much. We'll wrap it up in studio very briefly, RET.
Yes, ma'am.
And in the sense that, has this come a little bit too late in his deviation, if you want to call it that?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's quite clear that, like I said, the act of desperation. But what is also critical is for us to know that we think we know what he's standing for. This thing that we don't know. We know he stands for white monopoly, capital enhancement. He stands for our people continue with the suffering that is vulnerable and helpless people are going to continue suffering under his leadership. So we know what he stands for. It does not stand for radical economic transformation.
We're going to leave it
He's
there.
faking it.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. That's Fiso Matlango, Group Political Editor, Papano Pasha from the Progressive Professionals Forum as their spokesperson, and Lucky Tekisho, Transform RSA Deputy President. Thanks indeed for watching. We take a quick break. Up next, ANC decides with Mfundo Mabalani. Do stay with us.